Welcome to Reform Thinking. Imagine running a marathon barefoot on broken glass, and when someone asks how you feel, you smile and say, it's just a light momentary discomfort.
Right. I mean, you'd sound completely detached from reality.
You really would. But today on our deep dive, we are looking at a man who did that very thing. And we are unpacking a 19th century manuscript that decodes his whole psychological secret.
Yeah, we're analyzing a sermon by Charles Haddon Spurgeon. It's titled Vanities and Verities.
Right, and it's based on this single brain-bending verse from the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 4:18. Paul writes about looking, quote, not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen.
Which is such a wild concept when you really, try to apply it.
So we are going to figure out how fixing your eyes on invisible things can alter your physical reality. Listener, we have your source material queued up, so let's jump right into this.
Yeah, I mean, it is a text that forces a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Because, well, we live in a physical universe, right? And we're conditioned from birth to trust what we can measure, touch, categorize. Like, if we can see it, we believe it's solid.
But Paul just flips that lens entirely backward.
He does. He argues that the things we can touch, the objects we interact with every single day, those are the transient illusions. The things we cannot see are the only solid, lasting realities.
Which completely upends how we process everything, from, our bank accounts to our daily stress.
Yeah, and Spurgeon breaks down the mechanics of how this actually works in the human mind.
But before we get into the practical mechanics, Spurgeon starts by dismantling a very specific myth about the Apostle Paul himself.
Right. The myth of the Stoic believer.
Yeah. There is this popular idea that to possess massive spiritual resilience, to endure what Paul endured, you have to be some kind of unfeeling Stoic.
Like the ancient Greek Stoics, Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, guys who valued complete emotional detachment. People project that onto Paul and assume he was just this stone man who didn't feel pain.
It's the myth of the invulnerable believer. I mean, we read historical accounts of Paul surviving shipwrecks, riots, constant betrayal.
Being pelted with heavy stones at Lystra.
Right, the stonings. And the natural human tendency is to project a sort of superhuman anesthesia onto him.
Like he just didn't feel it.
Yeah, we assume he just didn't feel the physical or emotional agony the way a normal person would. But Spurgeon vehemently argues against this assumption.
He points out that Paul was exceedingly sensitive, right?
Oh, absolutely. He had a nervous system. He had a fragile physical body that bled when struck.
He really did. You read his letters, and I mean, the man wears his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah, he doesn't hide it.
If a friend abandons him, he writes about the intense sting of that betrayal. If a congregation rejects his teaching, he writes about weeping over them in anguish.
He felt poverty. He felt shame.
When the stones hit his body at Lystra, they broke his skin and fractured his bones. He wasn't walking around in emotional or physical armor. The pain was absolute and agonizing.
Which makes his endurance all the more staggering, honestly. Because he didn't suppress his feelings. He placed them on a totally different scale of measurement.
Right.
When modern people try to build resilience, it often looks like building a psychological wall.
Like we tell ourselves to feel nothing, block out the noise, and just push through by sheer willpower.
Yeah, but Paul didn't do that. He felt the cold in the Roman dungeon, he felt the lacerations from the Roman whip, and he felt the sting of public hatred. Yet he pressed steadily forward, as if God had hurled him like a thunderbolt.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if he feels everything so acutely, how does he not just collapse under the sheer weight of the trauma?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture.
Like, is it a matter of cognitive framing? Like a marathon runner who feels the burning in their lungs and the blistering on their feet, but they hyper-focus on the finish line so the pain becomes secondary to the goal?
That analogy hits the mark beautifully. Paul's secret was his vision, not a lack of nerve endings. He looked at a reality that outlasted the pain.
They don't deny the pain. They just make the goal larger than the pain.
Yeah, he weighed his afflictions, which were massive by any human standard, and he calculated them as light and momentary.
Because they were being weighed against an eternal weight of glory.
Right, it's the contrast effect. A boulder is incredibly heavy if you're holding it, but you drop it next to the mass of a towering mountain range, it looks like a pebble.
Yeah.
Paul saw the mountain range.
So he recalibrated his internal scales. The pain was real, but the denominator was infinity, making the fraction approach zero.
Yes.
And that requires a very specific type of vision. Spurgeon breaks down the text by examining the original Greek word for look in Paul's letter.
The word is scopio,
Right.
It's where we get modern English words like telescope or microscope. It implies intense scrutiny. It means to fixate your gaze, to scrutinize, or to direct your full attention toward a specific target.
And Spurgeon runs that word scopeo through several different applications. The first way he defines not looking at visible things is by, well, lightly esteeming them.
Meaning you assign them a very low value. You treat them as if they are barely worth a glance because their expiration date is so rapidly approaching.
He uses two distinct illustrations from 19th century life to explain this concept, right?
He does. The first is a traveler staying in a highly uncomfortable hostelry or an inn for a single night. And the second is a passenger taking a very short train ride.
Let's examine the train ride first. He mentions the route from Borough Road to Elephant and Castle.
Yeah.
Now, listener, if you have ever taken the tube in London, you know that is an incredibly short distance. In Spurgeon's day, with steam trains, you barely had time to find your seat before the conductor announced the destination.
The sheer pragmatism of this illustration is brilliant.
It really is.
Think about the mental mechanics of that short train ride. Are you going to argue with the person next to you about who gets the armrest?
No, of course not.
Are you going to pull out a cloth and wipe down the window so you can get a better view of the passing buildings? No, you are hardly in the carriage before you have to step out onto the platform again.
The mental calorie expenditure required to improve the environment is totally wasted.
Exactly. Spot on. It's about return on investment.
The return on investment for getting angry at a bad seat on a 3-minute train ride is zero because the asset vanishes almost immediately.
And the same logic applies to the traveler in the bad inn. The bed is hard, the room is freezing cold, the food is terrible, but the traveler wakes up at dawn and leaves.
Investing massive emotional energy into complaining about the drafty room is an irrational waste of time. You chronicle the fact that the room is bad and you move on.
Because your mind is locked onto the destination. Apply this directly to the scenarios that raise your blood pressure today.
Right.
A stressful meeting at the office, a temporary financial squeeze, a misunderstanding with a neighbor.
If you view that situation as a one-night stay in a bad hotel room, your physiological reaction changes entirely, your cortisol levels drop.
You realize this is not my permanent residence. This is a fleeting moment in the grand timeline of my existence.
So, what does this all mean for our daily grievances? I want to push back on that application for a moment.
Okay, sure.
Because if my boss is berating me or, my car transmission blows out on the highway, are we supposed to just shrug off everything that goes wrong? Do I just sit there with a blank smile and say, well, it is just a short train ride?
It sounds suspiciously like apathetic resignation.
Yeah, it sounds like giving up.
It is a crucial distinction to make here. It is not apathy, it is proportion.
Proportion.
Right. Apathy dictates that you care about absolutely nothing, and eternal perspective dictates that you care about things in strict proportion to how long they last.
Okay, so you still take your car to the mechanic.
Yes. You still address the toxic work environment through the proper HR channels if you can. But you do not let the broken transmission or the angry boss consume your core identity or destroy your internal peace.
You recognize their firm limits.
Yeah, they have the capacity to ruin your afternoon, but they possess zero capacity to touch your eternity.
You lower their security clearance in your brain.
That's a great way to put it.
You acknowledge they are in the building, but you do not give them access to the control room.
Precisely. You handle the visible issues, but you do not fix your scopeo on them. You do not scrutinize them as if they are the ultimate, final reality of your life.
But knowing a hotel room is temporary is the easy part. Spurgeon pushes the concept much further.
He really does.
Because it is not just about ignoring a bad room. It is about recognizing that the room itself is an illusion compared to what comes next.
He says we must not regard present things as substantial at all. He compares the events of this physical life to a dissolving view.
A dissolving view. For those unfamiliar with Victorian entertainment, before digital projectors existed, people attended magic lantern shows.
Right.
A projectionist would use 2 lanterns, and one image on a screen would slowly fade out while another simultaneously faded in.
The image looked massive and vivid on the sheet, but it was just light and shadow. It had no actual substance.
It is like trying to build a house out of theater props. You walk onto a stage, and the brick wall looks incredibly solid. The wooden door looks heavy and imposing.
But the moment you lean your actual physical weight against that painted canvas wall, it collapses entirely.
It was never designed to hold the weight of a human being.
That is a fantastic way to picture the psychological safety of holding things loosely. And this is where his text gets highly practical and intensely provocative.
Yeah.
He tells the listener to look at their wealth, their physical money, and recognize it as fleeting canvas. If you treat wealth as solid, if you lean the full weight of your security against it, it becomes a god.
And when a false god fails you, the psychological devastation is absolute.
And he does not stop at financial wealth.
No, he doesn't. Here is the part of the text that made me stop reading and stare at the wall. He suggests that when a child is born into your house, you should mentally read the word mortal written across the brow of that newborn.
It is a jarring image for modern sensibilities.
It is beyond jarring. Who looks at a beautiful new baby and immediately thinks about human mortality?
Right, it feels wrong.
It sounds completely morbid. It sounds like a terrible, depressing way to live your life, constantly anticipating the end of the things you love.
It sounds morbid until you understand the psychological safety net he is constructing. He is addressing the danger of human attachment and the reality of the hedonic treadmill.
Treating temporary things, even beautiful, precious things like human life, as permanent sets us up for devastating heartbreak.
If you operate under the delusion that you are the parent of an immortal being on this earth, you are living in a fiction.
Because physical death is a non-negotiable reality of the human condition.
Acknowledging the mortality of our loved ones does not equate to loving them less. It functions as a mechanism to prevent idolatry. It aligns our internal expectations with reality.
If you recognize that every single comfort, every relationship, and every dollar is a temporary loan from the Creator, you enjoy the loan while you possess it.
But you do not shatter into a million pieces when the owner recalls the loan.
Listener, audit your own life right now. Where are you leaning your weight against those stage props for security?
Is it your bank account? Is it a romantic relationship? Is it your physical health?
Because health is the ultimate dissolving view. You can be at peak physical fitness on a Monday, and a single microscopic cell mutation alters your entire reality by Tuesday morning.
Which illustrates why fixing your scoteo on the physical world is a guaranteed recipe for chronic anxiety.
Right.
If the objects you scrutinize for security are constantly changing shape, fading in and out like a magic lantern show, your internal peace of mind will constantly fluctuate. You will never find solid ground.
But dealing with loss is only half the equation. What happens when the dissolving views show us something wonderful?
Yeah.
This tendency to treat stage props as reality becomes most dangerous when we start celebrating our temporary wins too loudly. This brings us to another application of the Greek word scopio. Spurgeon says it can mean to mark or to highlight something.
To assign it high status. To throw a massive spotlight on a specific event.
He means that children clap their hands when you hand them a new toy. They jump up and down, completely elated. The toy consumes their entire field of vision.
But then he points out that adults act similarly, just with more socially acceptable toys.
A university degree, a sudden windfall of wealth, a corporate promotion. We mark it down in our minds as a massive world-altering event.
We crave the societal validation that accompanies the event. Spurgeon talks about the young man who earns his university degree and immediately checks the newspaper to see if his name is printed in the public registry.
We want our temporary earthly victories etched into permanent stone.
He uses this vivid analogy of insects in the summer. You put out a bowl of sweet liquor or sugar water to trap wasps and flies.
The wise fly lands on the edge, sips a little bit of the sweetness, and flies away.
But the unwise fly loves the taste so much it wades right into the bowl. It gets its wings clogged, and it dies drowning in the sweetness.
It is a brilliant observation regarding the emotional whiplash of tying our identity to earthly success.
If you allow yourself to become intensely elated by human approval, if you wade into that sweetness and let it coat your ego, you make yourself incredibly fragile.
Because the crowd that praises you today can turn on you tomorrow. If you are inflated by their approval, you will be destroyed by human criticism.
The emotional whiplash will break you.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Isn't it normal to celebrate a graduation or promotion?
Well, yeah.
Are we supposed to be total killjoys, walk around refusing to smile because the event is temporary?
No, and Spurgeon clarifies that he isn't forbidding joy. His entire argument centers on proportionality.
Yeah.
Notice the specific details of the analogy. The wise fly sips the sweetness, it tastes the joy, it enjoys the moment of success. The stern warning is against wading into the syrup so deeply that you lose your ability to fly.
So the goal is to prevent the success from clogging your wings.
Absolutely. If your joy in a corporate promotion makes you arrogant or makes you feel invincible in your own human strength, your wings are officially clogged. You are trapped in the syrup.
So what should we be celebrating?
Spurgeon argues that we should reserve our highest celebrations, our deepest emotional investments, for eternal milestones. A soul saved, a prayer answered, a clearer understanding of grace. Sip the earthly sweetness, but feast on the eternal realities.
Knowing what to celebrate naturally dictates what we factor into our major life decisions. If we celebrate the wrong things, our math gets sloppy.
This leads to the next translation of skopeo, which Spurgeon defines as taking heed or considering.
This is the exact moment where the theology hits the pavement. How do you make your daily decisions? What specific data points do you allow into the equation when you face a difficult moral choice?
He paints a picture of a merchant. A businessman has the opportunity to make a massive profit, say £1,000, by traveling to a specific commercial district.
But a friend warns him, if you travel down that road, you will have to walk through heavy clouds of dust.
The merchant would laugh at the warning. The dust is annoying, sure, and it will dirty his clothes. But compared to £1,000, it is not even worth factoring into the equation. He completely ignores the dust to secure the prize.
Spurgeon applies this logic to the believer's moral choices. He argues Christians shouldn't factor temporal losses into moral decisions.
If doing the right thing means you lose a lucrative job, or it means you get written out of an old uncle's will, you should view that financial loss as mere dust on the road.
It is like refusing a winning lottery ticket because you don't want to pay for the gas to drive to the redemption center.
That is a perfect parallel.
The concept of temporal discounting explains this perfectly. Human beings have a psychological bias where we value immediate comfort far more than delayed, massive rewards. The cost of the gas is negligible compared to the millions you are about to receive. It is terrible math to even worry about the gas money.
It's terrible math, but we do it constantly. There is a massive conflict between seeking the kingdom and the worldly anxiety over food and clothing.
When you factor temporary worldly losses into a decision about eternal obedience, your equation is fundamentally flawed.
We ask ourselves, will I lose my social standing if I speak the truth in this situation? Will I lose a percentage of my income if I act with total integrity in this business deal?
We let the fear of dust deter us from the gold.
Right.
Listener, consider a current dilemma you are facing. Audit your decisions over the past month. You can probably identify a situation where you stared at a pile of dust, a temporary discomfort, a fear of human opinion, and you factored it into a decision that required moral courage.
We inflate the value of the dust, and fixing that mathematical error requires a complete reorientation of what we consider valuable.
If we stop factoring the dust into our equations, we have to entirely redefine the ultimate goal or the scope of our entire existence.
That word scope is critical. Spurgeon uses it to describe the overarching target of your life, the thing you are aiming all your energy toward.
He warns us in the strongest possible terms against making visible objects our scope.
He brings in this visceral, haunting image of a dilapidated house.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the broken house is such a visceral image.
Imagine a building where the concrete foundation is crumbling into dust, the wooden support beams are rotting out from water damage, and the roof is actively caving in.
Yeah.
Now imagine a person moves into this house and starts hanging expensive velvet curtains over the broken windows. They roll out plush rugs over the rotting floorboards and arrange costly furniture. They sit down in a velvet chair, look around, and say, "What a comfortable, secure home."
You can't put velvet curtains on a collapsing wall and call it safe.
Yeah.
The structural integrity is compromised. It doesn't matter how beautiful the decorations are.
That is the illusion of attempting to locate ultimate security in a mortal world. We expend massive amounts of energy decorating our temporary lives.
We secure the luxury car, we buy the designer clothes, we move into the perfect zip code, we try to decorate our temporary lives to hide the structural decay of our mortality.
But the decay is still present underneath the rugs. He also references the biblical narrative of Jonah to illustrate this psychological trap.
Right, Jonah and the gourd plant.
Jonah is sitting outside Nineveh, boiling mad under the scorching heat. God causes a leafy gourd plant to grow up over him, providing this amazing cooling shade. Jonah is absolutely thrilled. He finds immense comfort in this temporary plant.
But the very next morning, God sends a worm to eat the root of the plant. The plant withers and dies in the heat. Jonah is completely devastated.
We make the gourd our God so easily. We try to find ultimate comfort in things that have a built-in expiration date. We locate something in this visible world that provides us with comfort, a stable job, an affirming relationship, and we lean our entire psychological weight on it.
But every single thing in this visible world has a built-in worm.
Everything biological, everything material has an expiration date.
So what is the mandate here?
The mandate is to find God in our comforts while we have them, acknowledging Him as the source, and to find all our comfort in God when those earthly items are removed.
Because the velvet curtains will eventually fade, the dilapidated house will fall, the gourd plant will wither.
If your scope is fixed firmly on the invisible Creator, you remain totally secure when the visible world collapses around you.
Acknowledging the decay of the visible world forces us to ask a very practical question, though. How do we actually lock our eyes onto a world we cannot physically see?
Mechanically, how does a human being do that?
Yeah, I can't look at a concept. I have to use my imagination.
Spurgeon explains how to look at the unseen. Realize it by faith and look with delight. You have to actively, intentionally engage your mind.
This raises an important question regarding our imagination.
It does. We frequently use our minds to fabricate scenarios of anxiety and dread about the earthly future. We visualize worst-case medical scenarios, or getting fired. We cause literal cortisol spikes in our bloodstream by thinking about things that have not even happened yet.
We are absolute experts at visualizing the unseen when it comes to anxiety.
We are masters of it. Spurgeon challenges us to take that exact same mental energy, that same powerful faculty of human imagination, and use it to visualize the guaranteed realities of heaven and resurrection.
If we possess the ability to make ourselves physically ill with worry over things that might never happen, why do we rarely use that same mental energy to make ourselves ecstatic with joy over the eternal glory that is promised?
He shares two specific stories that clarify this mental exercise. The first features a soldier in the Valley of Jehoshaphat.
Right, the valley outside Jerusalem associated with the final judgment.
This soldier is sitting in the valley, and he vividly imagines that massive future day. He realizes the scene so profoundly in his mind, the sky tearing open, the angels, that he physically falls to the ground in awe, completely oblivious to his present surroundings.
He pulled the future into the present through intense mental focus.
And that ties right into the second story he tells, about a poor girl living in a tiny, cheerless, freezing room.
By all visible earthly metrics, her life is miserable, but she exhibits immense joy.
Because she realized by faith that she was a heavenly princess. She knew a mansion was waiting for her.
The stark contrast in her situation is stunning. Physical poverty eclipsed by spiritual royalty. The unseen reality of her future inheritance was more tangible, more solid to her mind than the cold brick walls of her room.
She looked at the unseen world with intense delight.
But while the unseen brings immense joy for the believer, Spurgeon issues a stark, chilling warning about the unseen reality for those who reject the truth.
This is the point in the manuscript where the tone shifts dramatically. Spurgeon urges the unconverted to look at the eternal future with intense dread.
He doesn't soften the blow here at all. He insists there is no larger hope. There is no second chance revealed in Scripture. Once the physical body dies, the eternal state is fixed.
He directly addresses the human tendency to hide behind philosophical conjectures. He compares ignoring this reality to an ostrich burying its head in the sand.
This is heavy. People run away from talking about hell. It feels harsh to modern ears. But the ostrich analogy is spot on. Pretending a threat isn't there doesn't stop the hunter from approaching.
Closing your eyes to an oncoming train doesn't alter the physics of the impact. The necessity of facing reality rather than hiding behind conjectures is crucial here.
He uses an analogy that makes the abstract concept of eternity terrifyingly relatable to the human body.
He says, imagine a simple toothache, just a single throbbing nerve in your jaw. If you knew with absolute certainty that that specific pain would last forever, you'd want to die just to escape it.
A toothache. A tiny, localized physical pain, when magnified by the concept of endless duration, becomes completely unendurable. Thus, eternal separation from God is an overwhelming horror.
So extrapolate that concept. The physical reaction to the thought of eternal woe should drive a person to immediate action and faith in Christ.
He also points to the biblical account of Abraham looking down at the smoke of Sodom rising like a furnace. Abraham stood on a hill and saw the physical manifestation of judgment.
Spurgeon is pointing his finger at the unseen reality of judgment and pleading with his listeners to look at it before it arrives. And we must frame this warning correctly. This is not a malicious threat. Okay. It is an urgent, compassionate plea to secure your soul immediately. If a bridge is completely washed out on a dark highway, a man standing in the road screaming at cars to stop is performing an act of desperate love.
The unseen world, unlike the dissolving views of this life, is entirely permanent.
For those who have secured this hope, the future is not a source of dread. It is a feast waiting to be enjoyed.
And that leads us to the final posture Spurgeon describes, looking with hope, eager anticipation.
He compares the believer to an heir visiting his estate before coming of age.
If you knew you're going to inherit a massive estate on your 21st birthday, you wouldn't just ignore it. You would go visit the property. You would anticipate the joy of ownership.
He uses the historical imagery of the Israelites tasting the grapes of Eshcol before fully entering Canaan. They brought back massive clusters of grapes. They tasted the fruit of the land before they moved in.
Spurgeon says believers should be doing that right now. We should be tasting the grapes in our daily lives through our anticipation.
But crucially, he clarifies, this doesn't mean abandoning daily life.
Right. There is that old critique that says someone is too heavenly minded to be of any earthly good. Do I just quit my job and go sit on a mountain waiting for the sky to crack open?
What's fascinating here is that Spurgeon argues the exact opposite. Heavenly mindedness produces earthly usefulness.
We are to honor God in business, eating and drinking with an eye toward eternity.
By pulling the future into the present, the believer is freed from the frantic rat race. If your career is just a temporary assignment, you can work diligently without making it an idol.
Keeping transient things in their proper place allows you to utilize them well, rather than being enslaved by them.
You can be generous with your money. You can work hard at your desk, all while recognizing that these are temporary activities.
To sum it up, we don't have to wait to die to experience the eternal. We can taste the grapes right now by living with our scope fixed on the unseen.
It is a radical way to process human existence, but it is the only way that aligns with actual reality.
We have covered massive ground today. To wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering concept to mull over.
Think about tomorrow morning.
Yeah. If every single mundane action you take today is actually a seed planted for an eternal harvest, how does that alter the very next conversation you have after turning off this audio? What unseen eternal reality is sitting right next to you, disguised as an ordinary Tuesday afternoon?
It changes everything.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time on Reformed Thinking.